A couple of months back I noticed my honeygold mango tree had a problem. This is my favourite mango cultivar, or nearabouts, and it's one I really want to grow on the property, so it's a cultivar I wanted to save. I noticed that a soft spot had developed on the trunk, and as I picked at it, the bark came away and it was some rot had set in. This won't kill the tree immediately, so I've got some time to work, or had some time to work, but it was going to be a long-term problem for the tree, and so I put in place a plan to top work one of my other rootstocks in the ground over to honey gold. In this video, I'm going to show you how I did that. On that same day in late December, I set about performing the first grafts on the tree. And I'm showing you a bit of footage from that time, but that's not what I really want to show today. So these first grafts were done with my cheap and easy cellophane method. This works sufficiently well for the cost of the tape and materials if it's really dry. Now, we were in a drought at the time and it was really dry, so I wasn't concerned. But soon after I performed these grafts, we actually had quite a lot of rain in southeast Queensland. It's been very wet lately, and the problem with this cellophane style grafting tape is when the moisture gets in there, it can cause rot to set in. And so I'll show you the results shortly, but they weren't 100% success, which you can get pretty close to when you use better materials like parafilm or buddy tape, and I'll show you that a bit later on. I turn to that. Here's my vetiver hedge collecting some of that water during that very wet period. It's actually a couple of weeks later, and you can see where I took the first grafting material from actually has some new shoots, and I'm about to do my second round of grafts, and this is perfect material. So I've got this one here, and at the back I've got a second one that's just starting to shoot there. You can see it right at the back over here. And so I'm going to take both these little scion pieces here, and I'm going to graft them on as the second round of grafts onto this mango tree. Go ahead and remove the leaf material that's on the scion. You won't be needing it. Now, to do these grafts today, I'm going to be using some specialist equipment. So you've already seen me use my secateurs to cut the scion material off the tree. I'll be using those again to remove any material from the rootstock that we're going to need to do. I'm also going to be using a grafting knife. This is an oldie but a goodie. I've had to sharpen this over time. It's not perfect, but it works. It's sharp enough. Parafilm. This is my favorite to use compared to, you've seen me use the really cheap cellophane style grafting tape in the past. That works, and some of the initial grafts on this tree I actually did using that. I much prefer parafilm, but it is a bit more expensive. Buddy tape's the best. It's basically thicker parafilm as far as I can tell, but parafilm works just fine, and it's a lot cheaper than buddy tape. You'll need your scion material, and then also when you tie it onto, when you tighten your graft so the cambium layers are held tightly together, you need either a rubber band, or what I actually use is the florist tape, this stretchy stuff. It doesn't stick to itself, you actually have to tie it, but I find I can use that to hold the graft together quite tightly. Let's get into it. Oh, also while I'm here, you can see these buds really clearly on these two pieces of scion. 1, 2, third one there, so hopefully this will take really quickly. Let's go. I start by just wrapping the scion in the parafilm. This just stops it from losing any moisture. Now you can pull this parafilm quite tight, and so what I'll usually do is get off a section, rip it off, and then just wrap it around the scion piece quite tightly. It actually sticks to itself really well, so if you do break it, no big deal, just rip another piece off and keep going wherever you're up to. You can see you can pull it quite tightly over any buds. Oh, I've just knocked a bud off. Bugger. Oh well, we'll see if any of these secondary buds take, but that doesn't look good for this graft material. Ah, what a shame. Alright. Okay, so that's our first scion wrapped. And I'll be a bit more careful with the buds on this one. You'll see I'm not going right to the base. That's because I expect we'll cut some of that off when we actually perform our graft cuts. Alright. Okay, saved one bud, saved two buds. I've done a bit better this time around. I haven't damaged the buds, which is good. I'll go back down, but I try never to go over the bud sections twice, because you want the buds to be able to break out through that parafilm. There you go, so that's our wrapped scion. Oh, sorry, I did that mostly off camera, I think. There's our wrapped scion. You can see the buds are nice and healthy underneath there. Let's go and graft this piece on. You can see where the grafts I did last time occurred. I did one on here, it failed unfortunately. One on here, which you can see is taken. And there's also a veneer graft over on the back. I'm going to show you how to do both types of grafts today. We'll start with the cleft graft. Typically for my cleft graft, I want my scion to be slightly larger than the rootstock. Unfortunately, to do that on this piece, I'd have to come right out to the end of the limb. And I actually want my graft here. So I'll show you how I deal with that soon. But I'm going to start by just making my cut wherever I want to perform my graft. Now for my cleft graft, cleft needs the scion to be in a bit better condition because it has to take pretty quickly compared to the veneer, which I'll show you shortly. And so for the cleft graft, I'm choosing the scion piece that still has the intact swelling buds. And I'm going to perform my cleft graft on here. Now you can see, normally I'd like a really long cuts for a cleft graft. You can see I've only got a short piece of scion material to work with because of, you saw where I had to cut it from. And so I'm going to do quite a short V here. I'm still fairly hopeful of this though, with those nice buds and using the parafilm, and you know, everything else is pretty good. So I'm pretty hopeful of this graft taking. And so I like to just cut it towards myself. Alright, that should be good enough for this. Now I'm going to line it up. What you can do, if your rootstock's slightly larger than your scion, you can actually do the cut slightly off to the side, and so you're not going through the full diameter of your rootstock's limb wherever you're grafting onto. And so I've done this slightly off center, which should allow us to get some pretty good contact between the two sides here. And that actually looks pretty good on both sides. I might actually just take a bit off here. Not happy with the angle down a bit further. Okay, there we go. Alrighty. So we'll put that down in there. And we've got pretty good contact on both sides there. So now it's time to wrap up our graft. I like to first wrap it up with just a bit of parafilm. Now parafilm's not very strong. Remember, it's what we're using to stop the scion wood from drying out. But it is strong enough to hold it in position. And of course, you want the parafilm to stop any moisture from getting in between the grafting surfaces anyway. So it's how I like to do it. You can wrap it in parafilm after, just to stop moisture getting in there, which I will probably do anyway, depending how this turns out. But I like to start with a bit of parafilm just to get it all lined up. And then you might have to make sure it's home, because it'll move around a bit as you're going. Alright, so that's nice and sealed from moisture now. So now I'm going to use that other tape I mentioned, just the plain florist tape. And so I like to just break a small piece off. And you can see this is much tighter than the parafilm. And you'll need to, like I said, this doesn't stick to itself, so you'll need to hold it when you do your first wrap or two until it's at least got pressure on itself, because it won't actually stick like the parafilm. And then this one, you can really put some pressure on and it'll hold that graft together nice and tight. Now make sure nothing's moving as you go along. You should be putting a bit of pressure on this if you want to hold it together. And then to finish it off, just go around and tie yourself. It does grip to itself. It won't stick, but it does grip to itself enough that it'll, if you tie a knot, it'll stay nice and tight. And there we go. So that's our cleft graft. Now let's do our veneer. Alrighty, I didn't like that other piece of scion, and so I'm actually went and got another piece. I'm going to try something I've never done before. I'm going to use a tiny little shoot with a fresh bud on it and see if I can veneer graft it in here. Now, folks, I've never done this before, so it'll be a bit of an interesting experiment. But I will try and veneer it in just on the top here. And so I'm going to veneer a really shallow slit this time. And that's where I'm going to try and graft this one into, and going as shallow as I can to get both sides of the cambium showing. I've actually gone thicker than the shoot, so I really don't know how this is going to go, but we'll see. Oop. Okay. Oh, it's so delicate. Alright, and then I like to do a little back cut, and that just slides under the flap, as you'll see in a moment. Just put the grafting knife away. And so make sure there's no parafilm or buddy tape or whatever you're using in the way, and then you just slide that graft in under the flap and you graft it down along the branch. Oh, it just covers the veneer cut into the shoot of the trees a bit too wide, even though I made it as narrow as I dared, but it just covers on both sides. So I don't know, I've never done something like this before, so we will see. It's going to be interesting if nothing else. So again, I'm using the parafilm underneath to initially just hold the graft together before I tie it properly, but also to stop any water from coming through. So typically you wouldn't want scion material this fine, but I do want to get that tree grafted onto this one quickly because it's going to decline relatively quickly. And I'm also, when I first started this, I was a little bit gun shy, so to speak, because I thought it'd be fairly difficult for me to get material of that tree again, but I've since found out a friend of mine does have access to material, so if this doesn't work out, I can always get it off them. Alright, so I've covered it with the parafilm. Now I'm going to use the florist tape to really cinch it down. Keeping in mind that such a delicate piece of scion material could actually be crushed if I go a bit too hard with it. Oops, sorry, leaf's in the way. I don't want to remove those leaves because they are what's going to help keep this little piece of scion alive by both shading it and keeping a bit of moisture around the area, and also by keeping the branch ticking over. So then just go around like I did before and just tie it off. So that is officially the only graft I've ever done with material that small. I don't even know what you'd call it. micrograft maybe. Of course, buds, of course, you use less material than that. And it's just like a big bud graft, isn't it? So I might just put a bit of extra parafilm on here, but in essence that's the graft. So let's see how these go in a couple of weeks. I always like to finish my videos, or where I show you how to do something, with the actual results. And so this is one of those first grafts done with the cellophane style grafting tape. It's gone fine. Remember, the other one did fail. This is the cleft graft that I showed you earlier in the video. So that cleft graft with those few buds that were already forming, both those buds, or all three of those buds, have started growing. I wouldn't remove the grafting tape at this stage, but I'm very confident it's taken at this point. I'll come back and revisit this tree at some other stage. I've pretty much top worked the entire tree over to honey gold now. Here's that really small scion wood that I did the veneer graft with. It took as well, so very happy with that. Looks great. You can see it's shooting from that main bud that was at the end. This one's a veneer graft I had done earlier, also taken just fine. Every graft I did with the parafilm on this tree took. As I said, it is really good stuff. And with mangoes, something that's a bit easier, you can be pretty confident. I did a graft where that first one had failed too. I used small material for this one as well, kind of like the veneer I'd done in the video. And you can see it's taken as well. It's shooting out the end. So every single limb has been top worked to honey gold on this tree. I'll leave it a couple of weeks and then I'll trim back all the branches to those veneer grafts, and obviously the cleft grafts are already terminal. They're already at the ends of the branches, and this tree will then be there goes my dog. This tree will then be honey gold. So successful top working of a Kensington Pride over to a honey gold. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.